Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie. And in this video, I'm going to be looking at the weekend of June the 7th and June the 8th, 2025. And I will be looking at the astrology and the I Ching of this weekend. I also want to look at the relationship between Donald Trump and Elon Musk, because there has been a breakdown between these two men. And, this is always a problem, isn't it? I mean, at least for me, when I talk about, Donald Trump, I've talked about Donald Trump a great deal. And in a way, Donald Trump is a very divisive person. I mean, he has his supporters. There are people also who hate him. And when I say things about Donald Trump, it often has an impact. For example, I might lose subscribers, and it can work both ways. I can remember, especially during the election, I was saying things about Donald Trump which were relatively positive, and I was being critical of the Democrats, and I was, of course, predicting that Donald Trump was going to win. And, some people were really shocked, and they were saying, they are going to unsubscribe. You're a Trump supporter all along. I mean, I never said I was a Trump supporter, but, that was a view. But it works both ways. I say something hostile, potentially hostile about Donald Trump, and again, there might be a feeling of shock and disappointment that I wasn't supposed to say anything too critical about Donald Trump. But as far as I'm concerned, I do not suffer from Trump derangement syndrome. I don't have a serious problem with Donald Trump in some respects. But as you know, if you've looked at my videos, I've made it always clear. But I would, if I was an American citizen, which I'm not, I would never vote for him. I would never have voted for the Democrats either. Why would you vote for Democrats? Why would you vote for war? Why would you vote for Trump when he's an environmental vandal? But I'm not a supporter of the Democrats. I'm not a supporter of the Republicans. And at the same time, if you're trying to judge a political character like Donald Trump, you should judge him not on the basis of your own opinions. Really, you should possibly judge him on the basis of what he stands for and what his manifesto is. And this is perhaps what this spat between Donald Trump and Elon Musk is about. Elon Musk took the view that Donald Trump was about, standing up against big government and pork and all these competing interests in Congress wanting money for their constituents and for their states. And Elon Musk, didn't approve of this. For him, this is not what Trump was about. This was not what Doge was about. And likewise, Trump was suggesting that the United States was getting too involved in foreign conflicts, and then look at what's happening in Ukraine. Does he actually know what's going on? And I am of that opinion that he doesn't necessarily know what's going on. Look at the recent attacks on the air bases. Now you might think, to plucky Ukrainians attacking the air bases. Well, it was firstly it was Russia's nuclear deterrent, potentially. And secondly, I believe there are sort of certain treaty obligations where Russia has to show that it's where its bombers are. So there may actually, in terms of satellites, and there may have been an obligation to keep these planes on the runway, and which made them vulnerable. So you could say that then that was a betrayal of trust, those planes being attacked. I mean, by the way, it looks as if not quite as many planes were destroyed as some were claiming. I mean, the Moscow is claiming that none was destroyed. Ukrainians were claiming at one stage that it was 40. I think that the real number is something in single figures. It was not a catastrophic event, but still, there is Trump's view on the matter. Either Trump knew about it, in which case he was just continuing with the conflict and going against his own stated opinions, or he didn't know about it, in which case he's out of control, or something's out of control. He doesn't have his finger on the pulse. So I think that there are ways in which you can criticize Trump, but as I said, I don't suffer from Trump derangement syndrome. And in terms of the people I know, remember, I'm in Washington State. This is a blue state. Most people I meet really can't stand Trump. And of all the people I know, I probably am the least hostile to him. I mean, I do often make some attempts to defend him. So that's my view on Trump. So I'm not really trying to offend anyone here, but I have to talk about him. I have to talk about his conflict with Elon Musk, and with this conflict, I think it's more about Elon Musk's horoscope than Trump's horoscope, because Trump is having to deal with so many different things at the moment. He is the president, after all, and Trump is not the only thing going on in his life. So I don't want to spend too much time, or indeed perhaps any time, looking at what transits and directions and returns Trump is experiencing, especially as Trump is about to have his birthday in just over a week, and I think in just over a week I'll be having a detailed look at Trump's horoscope. And what I kind of want to focus on is Elon Musk's chart, what is going on for Elon Musk. And yes, I also want to consider the relationship between Elon Musk and Donald Trump, and look at some of the the composite charts. There are several ways of creating a composite chart, but before I do all of that, I want to consider the astrology and the I Ching for the weekend, which is the weekend of June the 7th and 8th, 2025. So here is a chart for the weekend. Don't forget to like and subscribe if appropriate. And so here we have the chart for midnight on Sunday the 8th, right in the middle of the weekend. And so we have the moon right in the middle of the weekend is at 12 degrees Scorpio. So for much of a weekend, the moon continues to move through the Via Combusta, that part of the sky between 15 Libra, 15 Scorpio. In general, the Scorpio side of the Via Combusta is more difficult because the moon is fallen in Scorpio, and so it is more problematic. So as Sunday progresses, the moon will actually start to move out of the Via Combusta. So it is a moon in Scorpio weekend, and we can't expect necessarily everything to go to plan. I mean, by the way, the moon moves into Scorpio at I make it 3:23 a.m. London time on Saturday. So certainly, if you're in the Americas, moon is in Scorpio all weekend. It went into Scorpio late on Friday, and if you're in Europe, by the time you get up, or in Africa, by the time you wake up, unless you wake up really early, then the moon will be in Scorpio. So with the moon in Scorpio, it provides some water. That's the only planet in a water sign, and so you could count the true black moon Lilith and the North Node, but by and large, there isn't much water aside from the moon, and so it does create some emotionality to the weekend, and it perhaps provides some balance to the Gemini emphasis. There still is a Gemini emphasis with Sun, Mercury, and Jupiter in the sign. And as far as aspects are concerned, well, the moon, right at the beginning of a weekend, and this is probably more relevant if you're in Australia or New Zealand, the moon makes a trine to Jupiter, just as it makes I think it's trine to Mercury, just as it moves from Libra to Scorpio. And then in Scorpio, it makes an opposition of Venus and a square to Pluto. Venus is making a square to Pluto. I mean, that square is not exact this weekend, but we're starting to feel it, and Venus-Pluto squares can be quite intense. They can say something about relationships. They can be quite passionate, and things that we really believe in, and we may be quite possessive, especially when Venus is square Pluto. So the moon is picking up on that Venus square Pluto. Moon is making the opposition to Venus, then the square to Pluto. And aside from that, right at the end of a weekend, and I'm probably going to talk about this in my video for Monday. I'm not going to really talk about it today, talk about it in my weekend video. Is it right at the end of a weekend, we have a conjunction between Mercury and Jupiter, and we have Mercury going into Cancer. I mean, London time, Mercury moves into Cancer at, I think, 2 minutes to midnight on Sunday. In other words, 2 minutes before Monday starts, European time. But yeah, if you're in the Americas, this evening or even this afternoon, the Mercury will go into Cancer, and Mercury is making a conjunction to Jupiter. And Mercury conjunct Jupiter taking place in the last degrees of Gemini. Indeed, in the last degree of Gemini. In fact, in the last few minutes of Gemini. And so this Mercury-Jupiter conjunction in Gemini, I regard this as being, a force for good in most cases, and it gives Jupiter a boost. It gives Mercury a boost. You could say Mercury is, very strong, even though it's in an anaretic degree, deeply in the anaretic degree, in the last degree of Gemini. So, that might be about what we say, what we feel we want to say, though we mustn't forget the moon is in Scorpio. So, when the moon is in Scorpio, not the most verbal place for the moon to be in. And we have a couple of biquintiles. Now, we've got Mercury biquintile Pluto, and we've got Mars biquintile Saturn. And that Mercury biquintile Pluto and Mars biquintile Saturn, the fact we've got these two biquintiles may say that a lot of us were trying to create something. We're trying very hard to create something. We're trying to be in control. And it's hard work, but we feel that it's important. There's great fiveness to those two biquintiles. And, I can illustrate the fiveness of this by taking all of the positions of the planets. This is a position for midnight, middle of a weekend. If I take all of the degrees of the planets, I convert them to absolute longitude. Absolute longitude is when you convert all the planets to the 360-degree dial. So a planet at 1 degree Taurus is said 31. If you're at 1 degree Aquarius, that's 331. If you're at 29 Pisces, that's 359. Then you take them all, and you take those absolute longitude positions, you multiply them all by 5 for fiveness of the quintile. Biquintile is 2/5 of a circle. And then you take the number, and if it's over 360, you subtract 360, and you keep subtracting 360 until it's under 360, and then you convert back to the sign. So if we look at the fifth harmonic of the weekend's chart, just to show you what I mean, we can see that there is a Mars-Saturn conjunction, and there is a Mercury-Pluto conjunction. So the Mars-Saturn and the Mercury-Pluto are these two pairs of energies that we're really, really trying to manifest. We're trying to use our will, or at least we should be trying to use our will. We can probably ignore these biquintiles if we want to, but I think that they are available to us. And if we want to, be tough and have a tough view and really make a special effort to push forward with our agenda and make sure that people listen to our ideas, we can. And we can, and also other people can as well. So if you find that people are behaving in a tough way, they're trying to get you to do things, it may not be natural. It may be something quite contrived because they want to be in control. So that's a few thoughts about the biquintiles. Just quickly looking at the chart from the viewpoint of Sydney, Australia, as a representative of Australasia and East Asia. You see, midnight in Sydney, the moon is at 5 degrees Scorpio, so it's much earlier in the sign, and in 5 degrees Scorpio, that moon square Pluto, moon opposition Venus, is going to sort of move, probably be a feature of the whole of a weekend, or certainly the central part of a weekend, certainly if you're doing anything on Saturday evening. So there could just be a small difference of emphasis between Australasia and the Americas. And if you are in Australasia, I'm afraid that the moon in the Via Combustor is going to be there all weekend. Well, okay, maybe by Sunday evening the moon will be moving out of the Via Combustor. And then there is the heliocentric view. So here's the heliocentric chart where we put the sun at the center of the solar system. And we've talked about this conjunction between Venus and Pluto heliocentrically. And of course, from a geocentric point of view, we know that we have moon opposition Venus and we have moon square Venus. So geocentrically, there's also a Venus-Pluto feel, but geocentrically it's there. Okay, Venus might be separating from the conjunction of Pluto, but then Mercury is coming in and bringing it all together. So Mercury is opposition Venus, Mercury is opposition Pluto. So those Mercury aspects could manifest, and they could, say something about, what people are saying and what kind of impression people are trying to give, and they kind of reinforce the biquintiles. It could be about power and people trying to be persuasive. And also Mercury opposition Venus, Mercury Venus, because Mercury opposition Venus is an aspect that never happens geocentrically. So it might sound a bit weird to think about Mercury opposition Venus. And Mercury opposition Venus is, potentially about a creative struggle. We are trying our hardest to communicate what is important to us, what we're good at, what we feel we want to be recognized for. And it might be hard work. And we may be wondering whether what we're doing is popular. But should we be worrying about popularity? And if we feel we're unpopular, maybe we should try to persuade people that what we're doing really is worth looking at. Is that a fool's errand? Well, it could be. If people really are set in their ways, then I think when it comes to something as personal as art and creativity, can you really persuade them? Or aesthetically, can you persuade some people that a painting or a work of art is beautiful if they think it's garbage? Probably not. So that might be a problem with Mercury opposition Pluto and Mercury opposition Venus. But it does seem that we are trying to persuade people of something. Will we be successful? I'm not entirely convinced, at least from a heliocentric view. So now let me look at the weekend from the viewpoint of the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for the weekend of June the 7th and June the 8th, 2025. Aries. Aries, in some respects, it's quite a tough weekend. I mean, you may regard it as being tough. And, as far as you're concerned, things might have to be fought for. And so you have to adopt the right approach. And, with the moon in Scorpio, that's not the greatest place for the moon to be from an Aries perspective. It means that there's a lot you're uncomfortable with, and there's a lot you feel can't fully, reach the light of day. And, you, Aries, are someone who likes to be, direct and upfront. And, at the moment, that might be hard work. And, you if you feel that you need to keep things to yourself, then that's fine. There's nothing to be worried about. And you can perhaps be more intense than usual, and you might find certain people to be irritating, particularly at the beginning of the day, when the moon is making an opposition to Venus. It's very nice that Venus has moved into Taurus. Venus moving into Taurus suggests that people are changing, and people are perhaps being clearer about what they like and what they don't like, but that might not be entirely satisfactory as far as you're concerned. Perhaps you feel people are holding back, and because you think that other people are holding back, you may end up holding back yourself. And additionally, there is a biquintile between Mars and Saturn. Now, Mars and Saturn aspects are often problematic. You think of Mars and Saturn and the frustration involved with those two planets, and the feeling sometimes of doom. They can be connected with death and destruction. But when you're talking about a biquintile, I don't think that the relationship between Mars and Saturn is so bad. It's what you are trying to create. And I think in some ways, Aries, you're trying not to be an Aries. You're trying to be serious. You're almost trying to take things seriously, and you're trying to give the impression that everything is serious. And so there could be a bit of an exaggeration here. When you talk about things, when you express yourself, there is this underlying grittiness to you, which you may almost be deliberately trying to display. And I think it's the right approach. I think that you can come over as being impressive, as someone that people feel they have to take seriously. And in fact, if you make a special effort to impose your will and your personality onto your social environment, I think in the end you might get your way. It won't be easy, and it's not about sort of free-flowing charisma here, but it's about charisma that has to be worked on. And I think that if you can work on it, I think that you can get good results. Especially as Mercury is making a conjunction to Jupiter. And with this conjunction between Mercury and Jupiter, it does allow you to get your words out into the open. The words may not be especially smooth, even though Mercury and Jupiter is in Gemini, but people will understand. And so you can make an impact, and you shouldn't allow your seriousness and even your negativity to get in the way of that. Taurus, you are enjoying, I hope, Venus in your sign, and this should feel good. Especially if you're ascendant, if you're coming to these 12 sign forecasts from a viewpoint of the ascendant, if you've got an early ascendant, or if your sun or your moon, or if you're coming from a lunar perspective, and if your sun and the moon are in the early degrees of the signs, that would mean, for example, if you're a Taurus, if you're coming from your sun sign, and if you're born, say, the 20th, 21st, 22nd of April, then you're really going to be feeling Venus making the sign change. But it doesn't really matter where exactly in Taurus your sun or your ascendant or your moon or what other planet you're using with these forecasts is. Venus in Taurus is fortunate. It works well for you, and it works well for you, especially by day. You'll be at your most powerful by day, and that is because Venus rules the earthly triplicity by day. And so if you're doing something important, then go for the daylight. Now, that might seem easy in the northern hemisphere where we've got lots of sunlight, but maybe in the southern hemisphere, when there isn't so much sunlight, you might have to make a special effort to step out of the shadows, because in the sun, well, not literally in the sun, but when the sun is rising, that you'll, I think, be at your strongest. And that applies over, over the next month, while Venus is moving through Taurus. Now, the Moon is making an opposition to Venus. Now, that Moon opposition to Venus is especially strong on Saturday, but we do have Moon in Scorpio and Venus in Taurus, and that Moon opposition Venus could say something about relationships. And Moon and Venus, it is in fixed signs, and it could be great for the right relationship, a relationship that is already secure and has got firm foundations. But if there's if there have been any problems within a relationship, it's possible that Moon Venus opposition could exacerbate those issues. They are at opposite on opposite sides of the chart wheel, and so Moon in Scorpio can make things rather complicated, unnecessarily complicated, as far as Taurus is concerned. And Venus in Taurus is trying to hold on to something secure, and it could be about another person playing complicated emotional games in quotation marks. It's not really a game. It's too complicated to be a game. And additionally, actually we have a T-square at the beginning of the weekend. Moon opposition Venus, and Pluto is on the T, and that opposition is certainly challenging, and you may not like what other people are doing and what other people are saying, but don't rush to judgment. It may be that you're finding something out that really could be important, that you could be able to use at a later stage. And so try not to imagine too much about other people and to read too much into their actions, and try to treat people as individuals, and not to sort of think about things which may not be true. And of course, it's not just Moon, Venus, Pluto. We've also got Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio. So Venus is moving towards an opposition of true Black Moon Lilith. True Black Moon Lilith is square Pluto, and so I think with other people, don't allow your imagination to run away with itself. And also this weekend, on a different note, it is supposed to be a weekend. You don't want to do too much, maybe, because it depends on your particular circumstances. But this weekend there is a conjunction between Mercury and Jupiter, right at the end of Gemini, and that might be about money. Try to think about money, and it can be a serious weekend if you want it to be. Think about money. Think about what you can do to make some more money, or secure some money, or get some money back, because Mercury and Jupiter may allow you to say something or communicate something which could be of financial benefit, and it might be something you've given up on, or something you thought wasn't possible. But it just might be that one phone call, one email, one text message with Mercury conjunct Jupiter could make the difference, could actually get things moving at the last moment. So if you think conceivably that there is some way of getting some money, or it may not be money, it may be a particular object that you want, then perhaps you should go for it and see what that Mercury-Jupiter conjunction can deliver. Gemini, Mercury is absolutely on the verge of changing signs, and in fact it changes signs late on Sunday if you're in the UK. 2 minutes to midnight, the last 2 minutes of Sunday, when there's just 2 minutes left of the weekend. I make it 11:58 p.m. on Sunday. Mercury moves out of Gemini and into Cancer, and of course that's going to be a change for you. Mercury, your ruler, has been doing very well in Gemini in its own sign, and now it's going to move into Cancer, and that represents different issues. It could make you more emotional than usual. That's certainly one manifestation of it. But I don't think I want to talk about the impact of Mercury moving into Cancer for you, because it happens right at the end of a weekend, and that's something I probably want to talk about. I will be talking about when I do your horoscope for Monday, the first day of next week, assuming you take the view that Monday is the first day of a week. But perhaps more importantly, short term, is the fact that Mercury is now making a conjunction to Jupiter. This conjunction to Jupiter happens late on Sunday. Jupiter is a fortunate planet. Jupiter has been moving through your sign for over a year. Monday, Jupiter moves out of Gemini. Doesn't come back for 11 years or something like that. And so Mercury conjunct Jupiter is a fortunate aspect, and it is potentially a last chance to get something together. Now, I know that it's a weekend, things are closed, but that doesn't mean you can't do anything. You can't think things through. Maybe you should be summarizing everything that's happened over the last year, everything you've been planning on, you've been hoping for. What have you achieved? What have you not achieved? And Mercury conjunct Jupiter, may give you clarity. But if you do have an opportunity, then over the weekend, try to do something of importance, something that might help secure your future, and be serious about it. The moon is in Scorpio. Might not sound great, the moon in Scorpio, but it has its advantages. And moon in Scorpio, from a Gemini viewpoint, could allow you to just get yourself together, and perhaps it's just a question of organization. If you look back over the last year and you consider why you might have not been as successful as you should have been, might have been organization, just not getting yourself together. This is certainly how I'm looking at it. This is how I plan on looking at it. For example, my YouTube channel, we know with the YouTube, it's in some ways it's hard if you're a Gemini to be doing a YouTube channel, because Gemini's, me with my son in Gemini, you try something and then you get distracted and you want to move on to something else. And actually being persistent with something, I've been doing this YouTube channel for a couple of years now, and you keep trying and you have some success. I've got over 10,000 subscribers, but to be honest, this is just between you and me. This channel is basically stagnating. So, my subscribers are stagnant, my viewing is stagnant, everything is, but of course, from a Gemini perspective, that can can be tough. And when things are stagnant, if you're a Gemini, you often give up. But what do you need to do? And, what do I need to do with this channel? Well, actually, I just need to be more organized. Don't worry, I'm not giving up this channel. And this is a standard problem that YouTube creators have. You reach a point where you don't get any further. That's why YouTube channels often don't last very long, because people give up. And I suppose I understood that right from the beginning. But you've got to sort of organize it. Now, you've got to make sure that you do what is necessary, and you can't just keep going in the same old way. And I hope I'm not projecting, but I'm just urging you to, if you do, like me, feel that something is missing, that you haven't been able to get things together, but perhaps the potential of Jupiter and Gemini has not been completely fulfilled, well, maybe you need to push things harder. And, over the weekend, you can make a start. What are those things you want to get together? Well, now you can do it. And it's not very dramatic. It might be tough. You don't want to do it, but maybe you should do it anyway. And, at the same time, I think, Gemini, your ability to get on with people is going to be quite good. I think people are there for you. They will understand you, or at least they can understand you. if you make an effort, to tell people who you are and what you want, they will respond to you in a sympathetic way, and they can actually support what you're trying to achieve. So, absolutely, Gemini, don't feel that you are on your own, because you're not. And yeah, additionally, Mercury conjunct Jupiter. One other way of looking at Mercury conjunct Jupiter is actually can be very good for relationships. And Jupiter is ruler of Sagittarius, your opposite sign, and so Mercury is you're conjunct Jupiter, and so that may mean that there might be some real movement in an important relationship in your life, or you may have a chance to meet someone or get close to someone who in the past it might have been difficult, but there might be a real connection forming, and that could lead to something else. So it's not about doing things on your own or thinking it's you against the rest of the world. It's not, and you should be actively looking for help, support, and perhaps companionship. Cancer. Moon is well and truly in Scorpio, and as I was saying in my video for Friday, moon moving through Scorpio is by and large quite good for Cancerians. It's a relief that you've got the moon moving through a water sign. Cancer is, of course, a water sign, and with no planets in water, if you're a Cancerian, it can be a bit of a desert, can't it? And the kind of emotional engagement that you're looking for just perhaps hasn't been there, or you might have thought that some people were being rather too cold, but things are changing. The moon is in Scorpio. You are in touch with your own emotions, and also you're in touch with some of your deeper emotions, because the moon is not just in Scorpio. It's making a conjunction to true black moon Lilith, especially on Saturday, and that means you can think back to the past, and what was the past telling you, and it's not always easy, but you're able to maybe use the lessons of the past and also confront some of your darker feelings. And it's okay to have dark feelings. Cancerians do have dark feelings. Elon Musk, he's a Cancerian, isn't he? So we wonder what Elon Musk is doing and feeling with the moon conjunct true black moon Lilith. Well, in Elon Musk's case, he may be having some quite dark feelings, but that doesn't mean to say that they're destructive feelings. They are constructive. And don't forget, Elon Musk, a Cancerian. I'm not saying he should be a role model for you, but just remember that Cancerians can be incredibly successful. And day or two ago, I was talking about Julius Caesar and Alexander the Great, both Cancerians. Just a reminder that Cancerians can be the richest and most powerful people in the world. Just saying that to make you feel good. There's every reason why you should be feeling good. And the moon is making an opposition to Venus. So this opposition to Venus, it sounds good in some respects because Venus is in Taurus, but it's possible that some things are just not just some things. Some people are just too much of a good thing. Some people might be too cloying, too possessive, especially as the moon is making a square to Pluto and an opposition to Venus. Or is it you? Cancerians can actually be quite possessive, and the weekend does start off with a T-square. We've got moon opposition Venus with, in fact, moon conjunct true black moon Lilith, opposition Venus with Uranus on the T, Uranus making the square to Venus. Sorry, not Uranus, I mean Pluto. Pluto making a square to Venus, and Pluto making the square to the moon and true black moon Lilith. So, that T-square could be a problem, but it needn't be a problem if you just take yourself seriously and you tune into your own feelings. You'll know what to do, and you can understand things that other people just don't get, and don't get caught up in another person's orbit. I mean, you could, but that's not what you really want to do. And Moon and Scorpio, it does have a lighter note to it, from a Cancerian view, not from necessarily from anyone else's point of view. But Moon and Scorpio can allow you to be yourself, to be creative, in your own way, and to enjoy things, with real passion. And perhaps that's what you should be, aspiring to do over the course of a weekend. And I should say, right at the end of a weekend, Mercury moves into Cancer. Well, it moves into Cancer if you're in the UK at 2 minutes to midnight, 2 minutes just as Sunday turns into Monday, 2 minutes to midnight, Mercury goes into Cancer. That will be early evening on Sunday if you're in the East Coast, late afternoon if you're on the West Coast, even earlier if you're in Hawaii or Alaska. So, Mercury moving into Cancer, it does represent the beginning of the Cancer season. Now, I know it's a couple of weeks more before the solstice when the sun moves into Cancer, but it's a start. It's the start of your time of year, where you can finally start to really express who you really are, and really get into your stride. And so that is certainly something to look forward to. And you may feel the change in the Americas by the end of Sunday. And when I do your horoscope for Monday, I'll be looking at Mercury moving into Cancer in detail, and what it means for you. Leo, you, in one sense, may be inclined to stay where you are. I mean, do you really have to do anything? And, it is the weekend. I don't know what your plans are for this weekend, but, if you're not doing anything special over the weekend, if you're not working over the weekend, then really, do you have to do anything at all? And Leo, you might just want to stay in one place and just take stock of things, and maybe explore your emotions and explore your feelings. And you can't do that in a crowd. And we do have the moon in Scorpio making a conjunction to true black moon Lilith, and some of those feelings might be difficult, but not destructive, but just difficult, and they need time and space for you to be able to work them through. And that might say something about your relationship to your home and to your family. Though the moon in Scorpio and other things could make you more possessive than usual. I mean, there's always the potential for Leos to be possessive. We shouldn't forget that Leo is a fixed sign, and when you decide you want something, then you want it. You want to just stay with it, and so there is that potential for Leo, and it's possible that the moon in Scorpio does emphasize this. So don't be too possessive, and don't feel that it's a personal slight if another person wants to do something their way. And in fact, this weekend we do have a T-square. We've got the moon in Scorpio opposition Venus, and with Pluto making a square to Venus, Pluto making a square to the moon. And especially at the beginning of a weekend, and particularly if you're in Australia or New Zealand, you may really feel that T-square. And there is pressure, and you're not quite sure, what to do, and you may even feel stuck. And you shouldn't feel stuck. sometimes, it really is okay to just be in one place, and you shouldn't necessarily assume that everything there has to be constant movement, and it may all hinge around another person or what you imagine another person is doing or wanting or is demanding, and it's possible that you have to change your mind, or if not change your mind, question some of your perceptions. I mean, it's not that you've got anything horribly wrong, but you mustn't make assumptions about other people and their motives over the weekend. I think that's important, and you should give people their freedom. They do deserve their freedom, and if you don't approve of what another person is doing, provided it's not dangerous or destructive, then I think that in most cases you should just let them get on with it. And with that approach, I think that you will gain respect. And finally, Leo, think about your own priorities. What is important to you? Venus is now in Taurus. Venus is going to be in Taurus for the next month, and I know it's a weekend. Maybe you're not doing much, but this is a change of energy, and it is a time when you can be thinking about what you want to do, what's important to you, and what about your ambitions? How can you proceed with your ambitions? And it may occur to you when you're looking at what you're trying to achieve, perhaps over the next month, that a lot of it actually is about presentation. And if you can present things in the right way, then your chances of getting what you want, whatever it is, are going to be much higher. And so perhaps over the weekend you need to think about this, and perhaps you can work on how you look and how you're going to present yourself. You don't have to do anything, you don't have to interact, but you can perhaps plan a new image for yourself. So that's one way of dealing with the weekend in a constructive way. Virgo, things are changing, as I have been saying, for the last few days, probably longer. Mercury is doing stuff which you need to be aware of. Mercury is an important planet in the Virgo chart because it's your ruler, and Mercury is the important planet. Virgo is not a planet; it's a sign. Mercury is about to leave Gemini, and in fact, it leaves Gemini and moves into Cancer at 2 minutes to midnight on Sunday evening, London time. So that means over the course of Sunday, if you're in Australia, in the Americas, then late afternoon, early evening, Mercury will move into Cancer. If you're in Australia or New Zealand, well, it won't be until tomorrow. Indeed, if you're on most of continental Europe, it won't move into Cancer until tomorrow. And so you might say that this is your last chance before Mercury moves out of Gemini, because Mercury is not just, by the way, moving through the last degree of Gemini, it's actually making a conjunction to Jupiter. So this conjunction to Jupiter, again, happens late on Sunday. And this conjunction is, I believe, a fortunate event. But, as we have discussed, the problem with Mercury conjunct Jupiter can be one of expectation. And there can be a lot of disappointment around it. And I think some Virgos have felt disappointed, that, Jupiter moving through Gemini was supposed to deliver so much, and it doesn't, in some cases, it doesn't appear to have delivered. So with Mercury conjunct Jupiter, you perhaps need to reflect. You can also act, if possible. If you do have an opportunity to do anything over the weekend, of a constructive nature, anything to do with your ambition, anything, whatever it is, whether it's contacting other people, doing your own work, whatever it is, really, really don't waste this weekend. I would urge you, however disappointed you might feel, don't waste this weekend. But you might also want to reflect on the last year. What really has happened over the last year? And it's possible that you think that it hasn't gone quite as well as you'd have liked it to, but maybe things aren't so bad. Maybe you have accomplished something, but you haven't given yourself full credit for it. And so, do try to be positive about Mercury conjunct Jupiter. Try to think about what has changed, because I think some things have changed, and even if it's just your awareness of what you want to do, what you're all about, what is important to you. These are things that could have changed. And then Mercury moves into Cancer right at the end of a weekend. I don't want to go into that here right now, because I'll be talking about that in my horoscope for Monday. But Mercury moving into Cancer, well, Mercury is moving into a water sign, and it's been an air sign, and there hasn't been much water around. But with Mercury moving into Cancer, at some level, I think you are going to become more emotional, and your feelings are going to be more important, and your memories are going to be important as well, and so is the past. But I will be looking at that in greater detail later on. And well, when I say later on, I mean not Monday, in a horoscope for Monday. And additionally, there is a biquintile between Mercury and Pluto. Mercury and Pluto, 144 degrees apart, 144 degrees, 2/5 of the circle, and that is about fiveness. And with this biquintile, it is really important, Virgo, that you do not underestimate yourself, and you do not underestimate your ability to have an influence. You can have an influence, and in that Virgoan fashion, you might doubt yourself. You might be asking, well, what is the point? People don't care. Well, that's because you're not trying. But if you just have an image of how you could influence another person, then you can actually work on that image and use that image and expand that image. And I do think it will have an impact. So if you're trying to change someone's mind, you might think it's a hopeless task. But have you tried? You can try. That doesn't mean to say you do the first thing that comes to mind. Mercury biquintile Pluto has to be worked on. It has to be practiced. You have to plan it. You have to think about it. But you can sort it out, Virgo. And so it's absolutely important that you don't doubt yourself, and you don't doubt your capacity for changing hearts and minds. And finally, going back to that Mercury conjunct Jupiter, there is an interpretation of that Mercury conjunct Jupiter to say it is about relationships. Very simple. Mercury rules Virgo, your sign. Jupiter rules Pisces, your opposite sign connected with relationships. Mercury, Jupiter coming together, you getting closer to another person. It could be about a relationship working, or you find that you want to get in contact with another person, and actually you can get in contact with another person. And if it has been difficult in the past, that Mercury conjunct Jupiter, may facilitate things and just may make it easier for you to take the initiative, for you to be heard, and the right relationship can, I think, be strengthened by this conjunction. Libra, the moon is moving through Scorpio, and it's moving through Scorpio all weekend, and with the moon in Scorpio, it may be that there are things that you're thinking about and you're wondering about. I mean, even worrying about a little, and maybe wondering, what you have, what you don't have, and the financial side of things could be weighing in on you with Moon in Scorpio, because once you start thinking about money, it's difficult to stop, especially on Saturday, because the Moon in Scorpio is making an opposition to Venus. Venus is your ruler, so we got a Moon opposition Venus across the finance axis of your chart, and Moon is also making a square to Pluto. So there could be something obsessive about that. So once you start thinking about a lack or a worry, of a financial nature, it could start getting to you. You keep thinking about it. And the thought and the worry keeps getting refreshed. Now, fortunately, the Moon is moving quite quickly, and so this is not a permanent state of affairs. But while it's there, especially on Saturday, it could be quite difficult, and it's possible on Saturday that something happens of a financial nature that you hadn't been prepared for, and your first inclination might be to panic or to think that it's a major problem. But that's because the Moon is in a Vir combustor, making an opposition to Venus. But if you look at it again, it won't be such a problem. It may not be any problem at all. So money-wise, Libra, it is important, not to panic, and also to try to get a sense of perspective. We do have planets in Gemini. We've got the Sun in Gemini for another almost 10 days or so. But Mercury and Jupiter are in Gemini. They're in an air sign. You are an air sign, but they're both going to change signs. Now, I actually think Mercury and Jupiter moving into Cancer could be very good for Librans. I think that could really be a boost for you. And Jupiter moving into Cancer is going to stay in Cancer for quite a long time, best part of a year. Sorry, I should have looked. When does Jupiter go into Leo? Sorry, I should have, one of those situations where I should have prepared myself, but Jupiter stays in Cancer and until, let me just check. Jupiter will stay in Cancer until, I think that's end of July, right at the end of July, right at the end of June, even into July, sort of around, looks in my mind June the 30th of 2026 is when it moves out of Cancer. So, that Jupiter in Cancer is really going to help you. It can help you, and that's certainly something I will be talking about, in my horoscope for Monday. But while Jupiter is in Gemini, do make the most of it. And that Mercury-Jupiter conjunction is about giving you perspective, and perspective might be what you need, especially if you're worrying about material issues. A perspective on what is important, what matters to you, and try to look at the signs. When I say look at the signs, I mean the supposed coincidences, the thoughts, the dreams, the omens even. And they might be telling you something. They might be reminding you of something. And yes, you need perspective, or at least you can benefit from perspective, and you can benefit from interactions with people who have a different view from yourself. So from a social perspective, don't restrict yourself to one group of people, and try to seek out people who do have a different view, and you can benefit from that, because you do need that. I said you can really benefit from that, and it might be a time where you're starting to summarize. You've had different impressions over the last year. You've had not just ambitions, but you've had almost fantasies as well, and you're starting to see what is possible and what is not possible. And then as Mercury and Jupiter move into Cancer, then it's time to stop fantasizing, to stop dreaming, and to start to put things into practice. But as I said, I'll be discussing that in my reading for you for Monday. Scorpio. Scorpio, you are feeling relatively centered. You feel like you know what's happening and you understand what's happening, and you're aware of what other people are doing, what other people are trying to achieve. You're going to be a difficult person to fool, maybe even an impossible person to fool. And so if you have some perception, then listen to that perception. You're probably right, and you can see things that other people miss because of that. And there could be a case for saying that you might actually be picking up too much. Just because you know the truth, you see the entire psychological picture. It isn't always a good thing, but it is possible that your understanding can almost overwhelm you. And once you realize who people are, what they're doing, and what their motivations are, that could be challenging, because how can you talk to them in a normal way ever again? I mean, that's a bit dramatic, but you know what I mean. Scorpios are very good at understanding things, and sometimes they can be too good at understanding things, especially at a psychological level. And on Saturday, there is a T-square. So this T-square, especially important if you're a Scorpio in Australia or New Zealand, maybe not so important in the Americas, but there's still a T-square feel to the weekend. And that is because we've got Moon in Scorpio, opposition Venus in Taurus, and Moon is making a square to Pluto. Venus is making a square to... Venus is actually applying to a square of Pluto. And you may see things, you may understand things, and relationships could feel very powerful, very intense, but could be too much so. And Pluto is on the T, and so what does that mean? Well, with Pluto making that square to Moon and true black moon Lilith and Venus, it's important that you stick to what you believe in and what you know, and you just remind yourself that it can't be compromised. It won't be compromised. And if you actually realize that it can't be compromised, then that gives you freedom. It gives you freedom to explore. It gives you freedom maybe to get close to people, because however close you get to people, you're going to still be able to maintain your freedom. And and in fact, when you try, you can actually take some risks, social risks. You can get close to people. You can reveal yourself. You can reveal your intentions. You can reveal what's important to you, and it won't reduce your power. Actually, it will strengthen you. And that's perhaps what you realize. And it may actually be that the thing that you believe is going to weaken you may actually support you and give you more gravitas. And let's not also forget that Mars is making a biquintile to Saturn. Mars and Saturn 144 degrees apart. This is an aspect which, because it's a biquintile, it's probably an optional aspect. You don't have to be affected by it if you don't want to. But if you want to come over as a very serious person, the kind of person that people don't mess with, then Scorpio, you absolutely can. And it might be contrived, not entirely contrived, but you can really push the Scorpio image and come over as being tough and uncompromising. And I think that people, they might not appreciate it, but I think that they will give you the recognition and maybe respect, well, definitely respect that you deserve. Sagittarius, Mercury is making a conjunction to Jupiter. That is the main aspect of the day, of the weekend, sorry. And, Mercury conjunct Jupiter, it is an important aspect. And it affects you. It affects your ruling planet. And, with Mercury making the conjunction to Jupiter, I think that that may put a fair amount of focus on relationships. I mean, Jupiter and Mercury are in Gemini on your opposite sign. So do, if you can, really, spend time, thinking about other people, asking yourself, what other people want, how best to deal with other people, and trying as far as possible to get close to people. So if you have been trying to get close to someone, if you've been trying to form a relationship with another person, not necessarily a romantic relationship, any kind of relationship with another person, then with Mercury conjunct Jupiter, I think this is something that you can do. So ideally, you would not spend the weekend alone. And even if you are alone, use the internet and your phone to really, see who's out there, see, what is available. And, also as Sagittarius, you can be very serious, and you have to get the balance right. You don't obviously want to be too serious, but, the way you present yourself is going to have real gravitas, and I think that can really help you, with relationships. Yet, we think about relationships, Mercury making a conjunction to Jupiter, being about a relationship coming into being. Now, in certain circumstances, it could be the opposite, and it could be about a relationship ending on your terms. I do not mean this in a negative sense. So if you feel that you've had enough of someone, or if you've had enough of a group of people, then you're actually going to be very good at bidding them your farewells. You can do that. And that may be how this Mercury-Jupiter moving out of moving out of Gemini and into Cancer could manifest. Realizing that something has gone far enough, and there's no point in taking things any further. And so, in fact, this weekend it's actually a great time for saying goodbye to someone. And of course, if you say goodbye to someone, that means you're creating a vacuum, you're creating a space. Okay, it needn't just be goodbye to people, it may be goodbye to a place or to a state of mind, but you say goodbye to something and you create a space, you create a vacuum, and because of that vacuum, something else will come in to fill its place, something better. And, Jupiter is leaving Gemini, and you might say, well, that's a shame. But, we shouldn't forget, Jupiter is in its detriment in Gemini. And so it's not actually the best planet for Gemini for Jupiter to be in. And tomorrow, not when I say tomorrow, I mean Monday, Jupiter moves into Cancer. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. So Jupiter, your ruler, is on the verge of moving out of a sign in which it's debilitated, where it loses points. If you use a point system, using William Lilly's point system from the 17th century, he gives Jupiter and Gemini, I think, -5. But when it moves into its exaltation, it moves to being +4. So using his system, that's a net gain of 9 points, I think. I mean, there might be other essential dignities to be thinking about there. I'm not sure. I'm not very good at memorizing minor dignities, like terms and faces. But there is a change, and that's certainly a change I'll be talking about when I talk about when I look at your horoscope for Monday. So it could be a weekend for saying hello. It could be a weekend for saying goodbye. So that's probably the main thing going on. And just don't have a blah weekend. Don't have a weekend where nothing goes on. Try to make something happen. Try to make it significant. And because it is important, and even if it's just only happening at a sort of a mental level, it still matters. Just realizing what is coming to an end, realizing what is about to start, and if you feel that something needs to be resolved, then it's a time to resolve it. And if you feel that you want to get close to someone, and now might be the time to do it. If it is important to you, if you've been waiting for your moment, then that Mercury-Jupiter conjunction could be very helpful. Capricorn, you are feeling relatively sociable. I think you can be if you have to mix with other people. I think that you can be pretty effective. You know what needs to be done. You know how to go through the motions, and you're not going to be tripped up by a lack of appreciation or a lack of awareness. You're going to understand the people you're dealing with, and you can be quietly friendly. What are you feeling like inside? Well, the moon is making an opposition to Venus, and deep down there may be this feeling over the course of a weekend that you would perhaps rather be somewhere else, wherever that somewhere else might be. But I don't think it's going to worry you too much, because you know what's required of you, and you can complete the mission without causing bad feelings. And so that's constructive. But I don't think that it's going to be an especially exciting weekend. I don't think it's a weekend for dwelling on anything, for spending too much time on any one task, particularly if a task is unpleasant. If something is unpleasant, and you might just have to look at it, deal with it, but don't dwell on it. It's sometimes easy to dwell on something that you don't really like the look of, and it's trying to have an impression upon you. But don't let anything have an impression upon you. Try to move on, and indeed don't let any one person have an impression upon you. Some people are like that. They want you to remember them. They might press their address or their email address or their phone number upon you. They want you to remember for whatever reason. But you need to sort of keep mobile, keep moving. And what you certainly don't want to do is get caught up in other people's issues, other people's problems. You can pay lip service to other people's issues, and I think in most cases, that is going to be enough. And remember, Capricorn, that what really matters, that the change that really matters right now is Venus moving into Taurus. You're still getting used to Venus moving into Taurus, and as I was saying when I was doing my reading for yesterday, for Friday, Venus in Taurus is good news for Capricorn. Venus is going to stay in Taurus for a month. You want to make the most of it, and you should be spending the weekend, or most of the weekend, thinking about yourself and thinking about what is important to you, and also what makes you feel comfortable, what makes you feel good, what activities make you feel good. And if you spend a long time worrying about other people and other people's complicated emotions, well, that's just blunting you. It's just preventing you from doing the things that matter. And so, do avail yourself of Venus in Taurus. This weekend is the first weekend where you can start to really appreciate it. And Venus in Taurus, it may well mean that you can start to think about the challenges of next week and what you're going to do next week, how you're going to show everyone how effective you are, but also you need to be doing it in a very individual way. This is not a time for Capricorns to be following the crowd. And, with Venus in Taurus also, it can be good for the right relationship, a relationship which is not about someone else just dumping their problems on you. That's not what you want. You can spend a few minutes over the weekend having someone dump their problems on you, but 2 minutes is enough, maybe even more than enough. So, overall, Capricorn, it's a weekend where you need to put yourself first, but you can do enough to be able to function effectively in a social environment. But it's not the main thing that matters. And the main thing that matters, Capricorn, is you. Aquarius, you know that some things are important, and you want to, do whatever it takes to sort them out. And you may be thinking ahead. Okay, it might not be important over the weekend, but next week could be important. And so you need to be doing, whatever you can. And, that might be your attitude. And so if something matters to you, and if it's just bugging you, then, try to get it out of the way. And even if it's something that you don't want anything to do with, it could be unpleasant. It could be something that you're really trying to avoid. But if it's like that, well, maybe it's especially important that you get it out of the way. And you could just grit your teeth. Let's just sort it out now. And with that approach, you could actually be saving yourself, a lot of trouble in the near future. I mean, not serious trouble, but it's not a time for delay. And you always know when you're dealing with something that you must be doing, and we always know that, don't we? It's just that feeling that and you're making a big deal of it. You're worried about the consequences. You're worried about the aggravation. You're worried about what you might discover, but you actually go and do it, and it's not as bad as you think. And it will create, I think, a great feeling of relief. And as far as this weekend is concerned, it's not trivial. It's a weekend where overall you've got things to do, you've got things you want to do, and you want to be able to assert yourself and be able to assert who you are, and also to assert your vision of freedom. Think about freedom. Think about what has been holding you back, but also where you'd like to be and how you would like to sort of break out and be someone else, or not be someone else. You can only be yourself, but be something else, or give a different view of the world, and something which is more exciting. So if you've got those kind of feelings, then perhaps you should be acting on them. And maybe what you need to deal with is just something that has been holding you back, because you really know how things should be. I mean, fundamentally, how things should actually be. And it just may be a time when you need to act on that, and also just communicate it. You can't make assumptions about other people, assuming that they can read your mind. They can't read your mind. They don't know what you're thinking. They don't know what you're experiencing. They don't realize until you tell them. And then when you tell them, it's obviously very clear, and you get a reaction. Maybe you're afraid of getting a reaction. But, don't forget, Saturn is now in Aries. Saturn is your ruler. It's in Aries. Aries is a dynamic sign. It's a cardinal sign. It's a fire sign. On and off, Saturn's going to be in Aries for the next couple of years. Okay, it does briefly move back into Pisces later on in the year, but it's relatively brief. And so perhaps it's a time to just realize what it means for Saturn to be in Aries, and it is to an extent about you and what you are expressing. And so if you let people know what's on your mind, that could help. That could really help to move things forward. And while you're at it, Aquarius, don't forget the things that are important to you, that you enjoy. There is a conjunction between Mercury and Jupiter this weekend. In Gemini, Jupiter's been in Gemini for over a year. It's about to leave Gemini. It won't come back to Gemini for something like 11 years. So, Jupiter and Gemini, it's a great placement. It has been a great placement for you, even if you haven't always been able to take advantage of it. And so with Mercury conjunct Jupiter, you may get an idea about actually what you really enjoy. What's really important to you, what makes you feel good. And it just might be an insight. And, once you get that insight, just before Mercury and Jupiter change sign and move into Cancer, that's something you should be holding on to. And, life is short. Why should you be doing things you don't want to do, that you don't find to be fun? Okay, sometimes you have to do it, that's true. But broadly speaking, it's your life. It's not anyone else's life. And that Mercury-Jupiter conjunction, can be giving you insights about what does matter to you. So just hold on to them. Maybe even write them down. Maybe write down a sort of a commitment that in future, you will be doing what matters to you. And it's not overly selfish. In fact, you will be embracing your destiny. Pisces, we have the conjunction between Mercury and Jupiter this weekend, and this conjunction is important. It could, in some respects, be the culmination of something, because Jupiter has been moving through Gemini for over a year. Now it's getting ready to change signs, but just before changing signs, it makes that conjunction to Jupiter. And that conjunction between Mercury and Jupiter, it could be a time of awareness when you start to see things, for what they really are, and you get insights. You start to see what's important for you, and you maybe haven't been prepared to admit it, but now you're starting to admit it, and you understand what security means. Security isn't just the same thing for everyone. It's not just a barbed wire fence and security cameras. That's not what security is. Okay, it is what security is, but different people have different ideas about what it means to be secure, and your view of security is particular to you. And with Mercury conjunct Jupiter, you may be able to define it. And additionally, Pisces, you may have some realizations about where you are living, the home you live in. What is your relationship to it? And this relationship may have been developing over the last year, and you've been getting some insights. And remember, it goes back to security and you understanding what security is. And whether you rent your home or you own your home, it's still about security. And so you get that you get these insights and you understand what it means, and you have insights into how comfortable you feel. And it is possible, Pisces, probably won't happen, but it is possible that you have a look at where you're living and you actually come to the conclusion that maybe this isn't the right place. You'd actually rather be living somewhere else. Doesn't mean to say you have to pack up your bag straight away, but it's just an insight, and it's an insight that I think it is fortunate. Or alternatively, you could be looking at your home and seeing some of the things that are wrong with it, but then realizing that actually some of these things can be fixed, or something can be changed, or something has to be changed. And it's not just about bricks and mortar or decorations, it's about your whole relationship with your family. And if you have a family, or you have family members around you, of course different people have different situations, but your relationship with your family, you may be looking at it and you may be feeling that some changes are required. Again, in order to make you feel more comfortable and more secure. And also with this conjunction between Mercury and Jupiter, it can be just about relationships, and it can be quite fortunate with relationships. It can allow you to get closer to some people. You don't necessarily have to do anything. Maybe it's another person is trying to get closer to you, and you can decide whether or not you want to be more welcoming. Or you might decide that you're in a relationship and that's the end of it. You could be. It's actually a great weekend for saying goodbye. If you want to say goodbye to anyone, you can do it. And it all goes back to security, and it all goes back to what makes you feel comfortable, what makes you feel secure. And that's something that right now, Pisces, you should be focusing on, and you can focus on it. And it helps the fact that the moon is now in Scorpio. And it's not that the moon is necessarily doing anything specific. It's the fact that the moon is in a water sign. You're a Pisces. You're a water sign. So that just gives you the emotional permission to do what you feel is necessary, or at least to come to the conclusions that really those conclusions have been trying to develop, but now they come through, or at least they can come true, and then things change. Jupiter is about to move into Cancer, and Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. Jupiter is your ruler, and I will be talking about what it means for Jupiter to go into Cancer for Pisceans in my horoscope for Monday. And those are my forecasts for the 12 signs. And now I want to look at the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is the weekend going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 6, which is conflict. And on the surface, certainly, this hexagram doesn't look great. It does talk about conflict. You being very aware that you can't get on with everyone. That there is contested ground. So whatever you're doing, there's someone else out there, someone else who perhaps has different views from you, different priorities, and it's going to be difficult to reach a compromise, probably impossible. And you just have to be aware of differences of opinion. And you can just look at that hexagram. You can see how difficult it is. It's got this certain imbalance to it. You've got 3 unbroken lines at the top, then the 3 bottom lines. The foundational trigram of that is the abyss. So there is turmoil there, and people can't relax. And this may be connected with the fact that for much of a weekend, the moon is in the Via Combustor, and the Via Combustor, things can happen, and the moon is in Scorpio. That's quite a stubborn place for the moon, and Venus is in Taurus. Okay, it's nice that Venus is in Taurus, but Venus can be very stubborn, and so, who is going to back down? So, don't assume agreement. So if you go into a situation thinking there's going to be agreement, or thinking someone's going to just say, oh, that's going to be fine, maybe you're wrong. Maybe there's not going to be any agreement at all. But, we do have some moving lines. And the thing about conflict is that, although overall the hexagram is difficult, a lot of the moving lines aren't actually so bad. And, the bottom line moves. And so with the bottom line moving, it's realizing there's a problem right at the beginning, and realizing that perhaps you're not strong enough to see something through, and it could just be about backing off, and just realizing that now's not the right time. Now's not the time to be controversial. Don't pursue it. Just hold back, and it will be okay. Then the third line moves. Now, in the I Ching, the third line is often difficult. It often can be unfortunate. But in this case, it's saying, well, don't be too worried. If something is yours, it is yours. It's going to stay. It's going to stay like that. And so you're not going to lose anything, but you might think you're going to lose something. So that's often what a conflict is about. Someone feels they're threatened. You might feel you're threatened. You feel that if you don't stand up for yourself, you might lose pride, you might lose something material. But there is a suggestion here that if something really is yours, then you're going to be able to keep it. And then the fourth line. In one sense, the fourth line moving is saying, oh, you can be successful. You can beat someone in a battle. Absolutely possible. But do you want to? And the suggestion here is, yeah, you might be dealing with someone who isn't in such a good position as you, but that doesn't necessarily mean you should pursue your advantage. Because if you pursue your advantage, you might have a short-term victory, but in a long term, it might not work in your favor. And it may just be about, noblesse oblige, accept your higher position. And with a higher position, or your superior position, comes responsibility, not just responsibility, but treating other people lesser mortals. No, I mean, it's just a temporary hierarchical relationship where, in the context of this I Ching, you might feel yourself to be in a superior position, but with superiority comes responsibility, and treating other people with respect, and sometimes just letting them win, letting them get what they want. It's not such a big deal. So don't necessarily pursue your victory. If you really do feel that you got it, you're going to win, and you're going to grind the other person into the dust, well, that's a warning. That's not what you should be doing. You should back off and perhaps even make someone feel good about themselves, even if that is not your instinct. And then this hexagram, it does move, and it moves to hexagram number 9, which is the taming power of the small. And in this context, the small is probably you, and the small is someone who is, trying to do lots of stuff. Sometimes I think of taming power of a small like a hamster, just ripping up bits of paper, and it's always doing stuff. But it doesn't seem to be very momentous. And you could find yourself just doing lots of stuff because you've got lots of energy, maybe because we got Mercury-Jupiter conjunction over the weekend. But it also says dense clouds, no rain. You need to discipline yourself and be tamed, and not feel that you have to be in a constant state of activity, constantly be trying to do something, constantly trying to achieve something, because you're probably not in a strong enough position to really see things through. And so some restraint really is important. And if you can restrain yourself and perhaps put some of your larger ambitions on hold, even though Mercury is making a conjunction to Jupiter, maybe that would be the right approach to this weekend. And now I want to talk about Elon Musk and Donald Trump. So they have been having a spat, and I haven't gone into a huge amount of details. And I haven't really read a lot about it, but I think that as far as Elon Musk is concerned, he thinks that it's all about dealing with, everything is about dealing with America's debt. You've got to cut government expenditure. That's what Doge was all about, wasn't it? And he put all this effort for a few months into doing this, and of course he got a lot of negative attention. But it was all about reducing the government's debt. And then Trump, of course, has responded, with what do you call it, the big beautiful bill, which basically there are tax cuts in it, and it hasn't helped as far as Musk is concerned. This is completely not what it's all about, and there may be other things that Musk is upset about. I mean, obviously Musk with Tesla is not a big fan of tariffs, I don't think, and he needs highly qualified people to work in his companies, and so he want if these people aren't American, if they come from somewhere else, he wants to be able to allow them to immigrate. So there are reasons why Trump and Musk have been have fallen out, and so you could say that you need to look at both of their horoscopes. Now, I don't want to look too much at Trump's horoscope because he's got so many other things on his plate. He really has, and there may be all sorts of other things going on in his life, which we don't really know about, and so I'm thinking that Musk has less of an influence on Trump than Trump has on Musk. I might be wrong about that, and so I think we should start off by looking at Elon Musk's horoscope. His birthday is coming up, and I would have liked to have waited until Musk's birthday, but he's the end of the month. We've got Musk turns. When does he turn? He turns 54. I think on June the 28th. So here's Elon Musk's horoscope. Yeah, June the 28th, 1971. And so he is a Cancer. And he is apparently the richest man in the world. And he's a Cancer. Never, ever underestimate Cancerians. Never. That is really careless to underestimate Cancerians. Cancerians have a way of winning through. Julius Caesar was a Cancerian. Alexander the Great was a Cancerian, I think. Okay, we don't know 100% sure that Julius Caesar and Alexander the Great were Cancerians, but it does seem that they were. So Cancerians just have a way of winning through, at least in my subjective experience, my observations of Cancerians. So in a weird way, I think there's an argument to say that Sun and Cancer people are the strongest people out there. Now there's no particular astrological reason for me saying that. That is just an observation, and I might be wrong on that. And so, Elon Musk, not, in my opinion, not someone to be underestimated. There are things about his chart that are very impressive. He has got Mercury in Cancer rising. Remember, the Sun was. What was I going to say? When the United States came into being on July the 4th, 1776, at least with the Declaration of Independence. Here is the chart of Declaration of Independence. We have the Sun at 1319 Cancer. So if we look at Elon Musk's horoscope, his ascendant is at 1330 Cancer, and his Mercury was at 1404 Cancer. So there's just something about Elon's chart that it really does relate to the United States. And Also, you know, the United States has its Jupiter at 5. It's got a Venus-Jupiter conjunction at 3, 5, at 3, 4, 3 and 5 Cancer. Jupiter at 5:56 Cancer. Venus at 3:6 Cancer, and so that is. That's picked up by Elon Musk's Sun in Cancer. So there's a real connection between Elon Musk and the United States, even though he was born in South Africa, in Pretoria. And he's got Sun in Cancer, he's got Moon in Virgo, he's got a mutual reception between the Moon and Mercury. So that's a great mutual reception there. That does give him intelligence, and of course communication is very important to him. So there's a lot there which is interesting, and he has Chiron conjunct his ascendant. So there's a very sort of 10th house feel to that Chiron, even though it's in the 9th house Placidus. Well, it's 10th house whole sign, and it would be on the 10th house cusp if you were to use the equal house system. And so that Chiron is really there. Chiron, well, you could see Chiron as simply the maverick. There's no doubt, whatever you think of Elon Musk, that he is a maverick, and that's what he presents, Chiron square the ascendant. There's also the wounded healer. Now, I think that Elon Musk probably regards himself as a wounded healer. He is trying to heal America. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong, whether that is the case, but that's what he feels about how it feels. And he is wounded. He's wounded. He perhaps feels betrayed that you've got this bill that is actually going to increase U.S. government expenditure. So you can understand, how Elon Musk feels, even if you don't necessarily approve of his presentation. And so, as far as what's going on in Elon Musk's horoscope at the moment, and one way of looking at it is through transits. So I'll just look at some of the main transits going on for Elon. It's not a great deal happening. I did look at it, but I didn't find anything too impressive. But we'll just compare him with the horoscope for the weekend to see if there's anything going on. And Elon Musk, he has let's see what's going on with Elon Musk. So Elon Musk, well, Venus has just at the moment, Venus has been crossing his midheaven, and I suppose been crossing his Chiron, and so Venus is about him, how he wants to wants to present himself. I mean, that could be that could be quite important for him. And additionally, he has got his midheaven is at 28 Aries. So Mercury and Jupiter have been sextile his midheaven. And Mercury and Jupiter is a very verbal combination, a very verbal conjunction. And so with Mercury and Venus making that sextile, for him, he feels he's got to talk, and he's got to tweet, and he's got to say what he thinks. And him saying that this bill is an abomination, I think he used that word. And I think that you could say that Elon Musk, he's a very matter-of-fact person. He thinks things should happen. Things in some ways he's a matter-of-fact person. He's got Moon in Virgo. If you say you're going to do it, you go and do it, and you stick to your words. He's not a politician. He doesn't get all this sort of all this pork, and you have to pay people off, or you have to different senators, if they want to pass this, if you want to pass this bill, you have to send money to their state. You have to, this is the way the American system works. And so Musk, as a businessman rather than a politician, one forgets he is a businessman. Sometimes he seems, a bit crazy, a bit offbeat, but fundamentally he is a successful businessman. And so this is how he responds, and his moon in Virgo is not very happy about it, and so he feels that he has to do something, he has to say something, and so those are a few of the transits. I'm sure that there are other things going on that I've missed from a transiting perspective, and then there are his solar arc directions. So and actually there are quite a lot of solar arc directions impacting Elon Musk at the moment, which might sort of help explain it. And so no, that's not the one I was looking for. No, that's him and Trump. Sorry. Okay, let me look at his solar arc directions. Okay, that's Elon Musk's chart, and his solar arc directions for the weekend are here. Okay, there we go. So some of the solar arc directions that that Elon Musk is experiencing. So his solar arc directed Uranus is very interesting. So Elon Musk, he has his Uranus is at 9 degrees 9 degrees Libra. So if you move his Uranus around 54 degrees, it gets to 1 degree Sagittarius. So his solar arc directed Uranus is exactly opposition his Saturn, and it is also very close to the conjunction of his Neptune. So he's got a Saturn-Neptune opposition in his chart, and his Saturn is he's got quite a strong Saturn, by the way. I'll be looking at that in a moment. And so with this Uranus opposition his Saturn, very close to the opposition his Saturn, it feels that something is breaking, that something has to give, and he feels that Saturn opposition Neptune, I think he feels he's losing control here. He's trying hard with his Doge thing, at least from his perspective, and Uranus has come along, and it's almost like he's flipped. This bill is just really upset him, and I think that's what this Uranus, Uranus making that opposition to Saturn is really kind of messing things up for him. And his solar arc directed midheaven is conjunct his Venus, so difficult to know whether that this happened around, theoretically, if his birth time was correct, would have happened 6 months ago. That may be about his Donald Trump winning the election, but it just could be about who he is at the moment. Solar arc directed midheaven on his Venus, and his it's actually moving towards a trine of his Mars. So he is really feeling he needs to present himself. He might say, he's going back to his businesses, that he's got a lot of things he wants to say, a lot of things that he actually feels that he wants to communicate. So from a solar arc directed perspective, there is certainly a lot going on. And look at his solar arc directed Mars. Maybe that's the real key. He has got his ascendant at 13 degrees 30 Capricorn. So his solar arc directed Mars is moving to the conjunction of his Chiron, and him being the maverick, also the wounded healer, feeling perhaps he's wounded by Trump messing up his plans to cut government expenditure. And so Mars conjunct Chiron, that really, and square his ascendant, he's not going to stop. This is a very aggravating influence, and it's very, very public. And it might already be, would it be exact? No, probably not. No, it wouldn't be exact yet. So it's okay, it will be exact in just over a year's time. But it's just going to get stronger, and I think we're going to go and we will be seeing more of it. And then look at Elon Musk, some of Elon Musk's solar return. So here's his solar return for last year. So this is a solar return of a year. He's up until his next birthday at the end of this month, Mars rising. this is a man who is assertive. He's angry. He wants results, and it's Mars in Taurus. It's a very stubborn Mars. By the way, I always cast my solar returns for, by and large, well, not always, but I try to cast my solar returns for the place where someone is born rather than where they are at the time of their birthday, because I believe that there is an aspect of solar returns which you can't avoid. You shouldn't be able to avoid your fate, if that's where you want to look at it, by just moving somewhere else. And then you look at his next solar return, the solar return coming up in a few weeks' time. And this solar return, quite a powerful one. We got Venus on the midheaven. We've got Moon, Mercury conjunction on the ascendant, Pluto on the descendant, and I don't think Elon Musk is going to go away. And with that Moon Mercury conjunction on the ascendant, and he's got a lot to say. And that Venus on the midheaven could actually be quite fortunate for him. I know a lot of people are thinking that Musk is on the verge of exploding, blowing up, but he's a Cancerian. Do not dismiss him. Do not dismiss him. And then I should say something very quickly about his profections. So he is about to turn, he's born in 71, so he's about to turn 54. So if you take his sort of annual profections, so when he was 48, he was on the ascendant, and so he's going to be 54. Let me have it, is that right? So 54, 71, he would have been 50 in 2021, so yes, so 54. So 54, we moved it. So he's covered by the descendant. And so that means his Saturn is going to be his annual ruler from his next birthday onwards. And actually his Saturn is quite strong. Saturn is in the right place. Saturn is he's born by daylight. His Saturn is in a masculine sign, masculine planet in a masculine sign. It is not retrograde. It's also, it's above the horizon. It's a daytime chart. So it's a strong Saturn. Actually very strong Saturn, you could say. And Saturn, it's in the 11th house, Placidus, but annual profections are kind of a sort of a Hellenistic, a Hellenistic technique, and so I think you have to kind of use whole sign houses for this. And so, from a whole sign perspective, he's got Saturn in the 12th, and of course, Saturn joys in the 12th. So you could say that his Saturn is actually really strong at the moment. And sorry, not when I say at the moment. I mean, if you probably know more about Hellenistic astrology than me, you may have your views, but I think that come his next birthday, I'm not convinced he's going to be in a weak position. I think that Saturn could really, really make itself felt. So again, Donald Trump will be unwise to underestimate Elon Musk. Elon Musk, again, I don't think he's going away. Let's may say something about his business, about what he's doing. Of course, at the moment, things look really difficult for Elon Musk, don't they? I mean, losing government contracts. There have even been claims about, his immigration status and what he's said in the past, or, I don't know about the details of that. And of course, Donald Trump is not someone you want as an enemy, but then Elon Musk is not someone you want as an enemy either. And just very quickly wanted to, before I look at the composite charts, I wanted to look at Elon Musk's Vedic chart. So here is his Vedic chart, and so at the moment, Elon Musk is in his Rahu Dasha, and he's been in his Rahu Dasha for since 2012. Really, that Rahu Dasha, that was a time when Tesla really started to move on the stock market. And so since 2012, Tesla has really, obviously taken off. Its stock price has taken off, and of course there are questions about whether Tesla can stand the competition from China and everything else. And so he's in his Rahu Mahadasha, and he is in his Venus subdasha, and that's from November 2023 to November 2026. So what is the state of his Venus? And in terms of Shad Bala, his Venus is quite strong. It has 1.24 score using Shad Bala. That's sixfold allocation of strength. Venus, he's got Venus in Taurus. Remember, this is, in fact, he's got Venus in Taurus in the West, and so he's got Venus in. Hold on, is that right? He's got Venus. Oh, let me get this right. He's got Venus in Gemini in his Western chart, but he's got Venus in Taurus in his Eastern chart. So Venus is quite well placed by sign. And, okay, it may be conjunct Saturn in his Vedic chart, but it's quite a long way, and it's in higher degrees from Saturn. So I don't think that is too much of a problem. And furthermore, Venus rules the fifth house, and the fifth house is a very fortunate house. So, that does suggest Venus is actually quite a strong planet. We'll have to see how it goes. I'm not a Vedic astrologer, but it's from my rather amateurish view. It doesn't look too bad. And additionally, Saturn is moving through Saturn's just gone into sidereal Pisces, and Pisces for Saturn, if you use the Ashtaka Varga system, where you evaluate planet transits on the basis of how strong it is in particular planets, in particular signs, using the Ashtaka Varga system, because Ashta means is to do with eightness. So it's 7 planets plus, not Rahu and Ketu, 7 planets plus the ascendant, I think. And using the Ashtaka Varga system for Saturn, the sign Pisces gets 7 points out of 8. So actually, from an Ashtaka Varga system, Saturn is quite strong, may potentially work quite well in the 10th house so overall, from a Vedic view, things aren't actually looking so bad for Elon Musk. And so, again, this is the person who, him and Trump are sort of, up against, they're up against each other. So let's just look at the relationship between Elon Musk and Donald Trump from a Western perspective. So here is Donald Trump's chart in the middle, and we have got Elon Musk's chart on the outer wheel. Now, don't forget that in Elon Musk's progress chart, his secondary progress chart, his solar arc directions, Elon Musk's progress sun is sort of approximately 27 Leo. And that means that Elon Musk's progressed sun is square Donald Trump's Mars, and it's actually approaching a square to Donald Trump's ascendant, if Donald Trump's time of birth is correct. So that does indicate a clash. I mean, it certainly indicates that the two men have a lot to do with each other, but that progressed sun could be aggravating things. So that is something that we might also want to consider. Now, as far as the main aspects, or some of the main aspects between the two men's charts are concerned, there's Elon Musk's Venus. It's at 19 Gemini. He's got Venus-Mars trine. So that Venus-Mars trine is hitting Trump's sun. And I would actually say that's quite fortunate. It's quite good. There is a natural relationship between the two men. Plus, Elon Musk's Mars trine Trump's sun. They can work together, and that might have helped in terms of, Elon Musk helping Trump to get elected. Now, where the problem might be Elon Musk's Saturn. He's got his Saturn at 1 degree 7 Gemini. So Elon Musk's Saturn is square Trump's Mars, square his ascendant. And so there's something frustrating about Elon Musk's influence. Or maybe Elon Musk is reminding Trump of what he's all about. He was supposed to be the president who was going to cut government spending. That's what Doge was all about. And so Saturn is calling Trump out, saying, hold on, this bill is not going to reduce spending at all. It's going to actually increase it. And so that might be how Saturn is working. So, those are a few thoughts about connections between the two men. Oh, look at Musk's Uranus. Uranus is at 9 degrees 29 Libra. So that is square Trump's Mercury. So Elon Musk's Uranus is about him being himself, being his usual crazy self and saying things which are perhaps unexpected, and it's hitting Trump's Mercury in Cancer. Mercury in Cancer can't deal with that. Mercury in Cancer, we often forget that Trump has Mercury in Cancer. Mercury in Cancer can be quite an emotional placement for it. It's not in itself a particularly noisy Mercury. I think all the noise that comes from Trump comes from his moon in Sagittarius rather than his Mercury in Cancer. And that Mercury in Cancer means that deep down, Trump is troubled mentally by Elon Musk's craziness, by his Uranus. So I'm sure there are other things that I just haven't noticed or sort of picked up upon. Oh, look, there's Trump's moon. You see, Trump's moon is making a sextile to Elon Musk's Mars and the opposition Venus in Gemini. So there's a potential clash there, but I don't want to go into it in too much detail. But plus, look at the North Node. The North Node is Trump's North Node is on the Venus. So again, is on Elon Musk's Venus. So there's certainly a sort of a connection there. Then there is the composite chart. So remember, the composite chart is formed by taking the midpoints of everything. So if you look at Elon Musk's sun, it's at 5 degrees Cancer, and Trump's sun is at 22 degrees Gemini. So the midpoint between the two is going to be about 29 Gemini. So we know that that's how we calculate the sun, and we can do the same with the moon and all the other planets. We can do that with the midheaven. And then as far as the ascendant is concerned, well, we have to use a table of houses. You'd have to decide what latitude these people, the relationship is working, or where it started, and then you read off the ascendant from a table of houses, or however a computer does it. So this is what the composite chart looks like, and what stands out about that composite chart is the conjunction between the Sun and Saturn at the end of Gemini, and it's potentially very dramatic, and it could be about limitation, the two men holding each other up. It's certainly a problem in the relationship. Now, why is that Sun-Saturn conjunction important? Well, a lot, or rather, why has it become important now? Well, think about what has been going on. We have had Saturn and Neptune moving through late Pisces. Okay, they're both in Aries now, but maybe they've already caused their damage. So Saturn was square their composite Sun-Saturn's conjunction. Then Neptune was square their Sun-Neptune conjunction. So over the last few months, the two men's relationship has been sort of undermined. And now we've got Jupiter. Jupiter is the great releaser. It's all been building up, and Jupiter releases. And so as Jupiter moves through the last degrees of Gemini, remember there's a Mercury-Jupiter conjunction taking place over the weekend. So it really blew up with that Mercury-Jupiter conjunction. And as Mercury in very late Gemini was conjunct that Sun-Saturn conjunction, as Jupiter was also conjunct that Sun-Saturn conjunction. You think about Jupiter as a benefic, but also, Jupiter is a releaser. And I would think that is the primary issue. That is, what has really caused the problems, what has released the problem. And you could say that look at the moon, and it's the Mercury-Jupiter conjunction has been trining the moon. So you think about trines perhaps as being good things, but it's brought the whole thing out. And so I would have said that is the reason why it's all happening now. And, final thoughts. I don't want to be seen to be taking sides. And I have looked at things from Elon Musk's viewpoint. Of course, there are some people who side with Trump. There are some people who side with Elon Musk, and there are some people who hate both of them. But I'm trying to be neutral here. And I have looked though at Elon Musk's chart. I haven't looked in detail at Trump's chart, and that's partly because he's got a birthday coming up, and I did want to spend a video, looking at what's going on in his chart. But although things look crazy for Musk, even though things look really difficult for him on the surface, astrologically, things may not be so bad. And Trump should not underestimate Elon Musk. It's not just because he's a Cancerian. Cancerians, he may be the richest man in the world, but, that doesn't mean he's invulnerable. But right now, Trump needs to be careful. And Trump, one shouldn't write off Musk as well. They had to, to think, oh well, he can't achieve anything more. He's gone crazy. He's doing all this crazy stuff. Don't write Elon Musk off. You should never write any Cancerian off, but particularly this Cancerian. Particularly if this Cancerian is the richest man in the world. So anyway, those are a few thoughts on Trump and Elon Musk. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description, and I will talk to you again very soon.